What are we fighting for?
All of the things you expect out of a good story.
It makes FF7R just look like a trash fire.
Every second matters.
We bottle our trauma up and we soldier the fuck on. What are we fighting for?
You always find a reason to fight.
Hello and welcome to Boss Door, the final threshold beyond which games must face their final and toughest opponent, the critical gaming public. My name is Ross, and I'm here with my co-host Joey, and today we're going to be talking about The Last of Us.
We both started this game at very different times. Ross, when did you first experience Last of Us?
Right, well, I played Last of Us when it came out, originally in 2013, I believe, at the tail end of the PS3. I think it was the last game of the PS3 era. And I remember this game really fondly. It was, I didn't make fun of people for saying this for Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it was one of my favorite games of all time. And going into this replay, I was a bit worried about how this game would hold up, because it's got a lot of difficult themes, and the characters aren't easy to read or easy to understand. Their ethics and motivations are really muddled and difficult. And as I've grown, I've wondered if this game would be the same kind of treasure that it was when I played it much earlier in my life. And I think it did, honestly. We played it, I loved it. I understand it in a very different way now, in a much more fundamental way. And in some ways, it's not the perfect shining gem that I thought it was, but at the same time, it's still probably in my top 10 games. I still love Last of Us.
So for me personally, I pretty much skipped the whole PS3 generation, and for the most part, that seemed like a pretty good idea. No, there's very few games from that era that people you should play this, except for Last of Us. That's the one game I feel from that era that everyone universally was like, "Oh, you haven't played Last of Us?" And I never really heard a bad word from people. Cause sometimes you have games people are very positive on, and then I play it and I'm like, well, I hate that. And I was a little trepidatious for Last of Us because I don't super love overly dark zombie stuff. And at the time, before I started playing this, a real life global pandemic happened, and it didn't necessarily sound like the top of my to-do list for a while. It did seem like a good time to start it, because the second one is out fairly recently. It seemed to come up a lot with other games that we were talking about, and I wanted to play a narrative-driven game where the story wasn't complete garbo, which I've played too many of those games lately.
Yeah, because that's the other thing about why we're doing Last of Us now, is kind of as a palate cleanser to Final Fantasy VII Remake, being so absolutely terrible, but as a way of examining games through a storytelling lens. We heard a lot of people, praise Final Fantasy VII about how good their characters and storytelling were. We thought we'd play a game that actually had those things.
I was also just somewhat interested in kind of how Last of Us looks under the current lens. Looking at the game kind of from the perspective of where we are now with all the pandemic and all, just society being X amount more depressing, it feels like that's not really what the game has you focus on. It kind of focuses on an idea where there is no society and everyone is out for themselves, and kind of what that says in a world where the only thing that matters is survival. In a lot of ways, it feels like it's not actually about zombies. Zombies are just the reason we have no government, and we don't have a lot of actual communities that work together, and anyone can die from anything at any point. It's not just zombies. It's other people killing other people, running out of food, and obviously zombies. So I think the game's message is more focused on kind of interpersonal decisions that people have to live in a world like that.
Yeah, and I think that's very common in the zombie genre of media, is that zombies are the backdrop to talking about people. And I think we see that very clearly right in the opening. Is zombies are what destroys the world, but it's not even the focus of the opening. It's just the threat that's happening.
With that in mind, it's not so much that it's about when are we going to die. It's about what do we do with our time, the time that we are alive. it's even more explicitly stated in the DLC, which we'll get to later. But a big theme of the game is just, why do you wake up? Why do you do this? Because at the end of the day, from a lot of the characters, the question is not if they're going to survive, is if they should decide to survive.
Yeah. And time is a subtle theme throughout this game. It comes up a lot, but it doesn't like show itself to the forefront. And the biggest example comes right at the very beginning, the very first scene, where Joel comes home and he's like arguing on the phone with his boss about how they don't have time to do the construction that they want to do. And his daughter Sarah's asleep on the couch, and she wakes up and she's like, "What time is it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's late." And she looks up at the clock and it's just before midnight. She's like, "But it's still today, because today is Joel's birthday." And she's got him a present, and the present she gets him is a watch.
I think there's a couple things that's really interesting in this scene too, particularly, is Joel comes home and Sarah is like very excited, and Joel's whole attitude, he says something around the lines of just, I'm too tired for this.
Yeah.
Right? And the second Sarah kind of shows up with the watch, it's like one of the few times in the game you see Joel, just be kind of happy. It's just he's with his daughter, and like, even though whatever his real life is, which we don't ever learn anything about for the most part, whatever the challenges in his real life that are making him come home at almost midnight because of work are washed away because the center of his world is his daughter. We don't see any mother in the picture. It's just they live together, and the house is full of evidence of they have a good and loving relationship.
Yeah.
And it's, an important part to Joel. It's the thing that can make a character like Joel work till midnight and be content with his life.
Exactly. And yeah, he comes home, he's tired, but it's all fine because Sarah's there. And then they go to bed, and Sarah wakes up and something is wrong. The phone isn't working, she doesn't know where Joel is. She starts looking for Joel. She turns on the TV, and the news is reporting some kind of catastrophe is happening, and then you see an explosion out the window and the TV goes out. Nobody is answering on the phone. There's like 1,000 messages on Joel's phone. Nobody's here. Nothing's working. Things are falling apart, and we don't know why. We're just kind of this little girl wandering through our house, and it's terrifying. And we go downstairs, and we go through the double doors, and Joel comes bolting into the room, and he's like, there's something wrong with the neighbors.
I think so. The intro is. A lot of people have praised this intro, but I think the intro does a really good job at reminding you this is what real life is like, and then removing everything that in society that would make real life, make the world feel like real life.
Yeah.
When the first things he does, he said there's something wrong with whatever the last name of the neighbors are. And then you have to you don't, but you watch Joel fucking kill them. And Sarah immediately is like, I saw them this morning.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of like, that's always a theme in zombies, right? Is zombies are faces you recognize. You have to watch your loved ones turn into zombies. But in the communal setting of what is a neighborhood, realizing that everyone, that's gone. Everyone that no longer is a part of this tight-knit community. It's you and yourself versus the world, because anyone could be infected. And at the time, clearly, no one knows how it works. No one knows what's causing zombies. No one knows what...
Yeah, it's very much a world that has never conceived of zombies, really. But I like the systematic loss of everything that makes the modern world modern. Your phones don't work. The TV's out. Your dad comes home and the neighbor comes busting through a glass door. Your home's been violated. Your neighbors don't exist anymore. Tommy, Joel's brother, shows up, and they get in a car and they run, and they don't know where to go. They're like avoid the highways, avoid where people are, and you pass this big burning house, and they're like, that's I forget who it is, but like, that's the Stevens' place. Like, that's just people they knew, and their house is fully on fire. Everything is gone in a moment.
And while they're driving, hitchhikers are like, pick me up, pick me up, pick me up. And Tommy's, suggests, like, we can pick him up. And Joel's like, keep going.
Yeah.
And maybe, you can't tell, right, if Joel is always a sort of out for himself. kind of person before the zombie outbreak. But you get, for me personally, I get the feeling that he sees what's happening to the world and is immediately, I protect myself and my family at all cost, and nothing else matters.
Yeah, because they're not hitchhikers, right? They're people just looking for a ride. I mean, I guess it's a hitchhiker in a way.
Yeah.
That's the definition.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're people running, and they have a kid, and Tommy's like, oh, they have a kid with them. And Joel's like, so do we. And they keep driving. And very quietly, Sarah in the back just goes, we should have helped them. And it's a beautiful little moment where, like, Joel, who by the end of this game is, you know, the ultimate survivor, the ultimate hard ass, decides not to help this family. And Sarah, who will be Ellie, who Ellie is based entirely on, is saying, no, we shouldn't do that. We should have helped them. Your way's not the right way. And it sets them up so concisely, so simply, and that theme will run throughout the rest of their characters throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, and I kind of forgot about the idea of, like, let's just drive out, let's just escape, like, because they're leaving behind their home, they're leaving behind everyone they knew.
Yeah.
They're leaving behind his job, which is assumably cutting down trees with scissors taped to bat. I can't imagine what else Joel does for a living.
He was so good at it right off the bat. But we get to the end of the intro, and Joel is carrying Sarah, and they're faced with a guard who's like talking to his commander. He's like, "Sir, we have people on the edge," and his commander's giving some kind of order we don't know. He's like, "Sir, but there's a little girl with him." And he goes, okay. And then he shoots them. He shoots Joel and Sarah takes a lethal bullet and dies in Joel's arm, crying. Both of them crying. And then the title screen shows up.
A very good title screen, might I add.
Exceptional.
But there's two things I like about that a lot. One is, at the end of the scene, zombies don't kill Sarah. And you feel like that's you get that. There's two ways you might approach it. You might have no idea Sarah's not Ellie because you just know it's a man and a girl from the cover and haven't thought that too much about it.
Yeah,
when
I
the
had
game
that
came
problem.
out. Right, I think a lot of people had that experience. Right, like Ellie is on the cover, but when I play a game, I don't look at the cover for a while before I play it. I'm like, I put the game in,
and that was probably like willfully obfuscated by Naughty Dog.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And maybe you see a lot of trailers, but a lot of times everyone's talking about Last of Us. I'll download it on the, PlayStation Network or whatever you play your games on, and then just start the game, and you're probably expecting this girl to live. When you get to the guards, I'm pretty sure she's gonna die. But, you might not be ready for that. And on top of it, again was killed by humans. And I think it established the most important thing, which is we're not about here to talk about zombies. We're here to talk about how society is crumbling around us and how we're responding to us. Because earlier, she's like, let's pick up those hitchhikers, and they don't. And then you see humans betray them and kind of proving that Joel might be right. That you really can't trust everyone. This is literally army guys who the idea of them, in principle, is to protect the people of the town from the zombie outbreak. And they're killing people from escaping it. So it's like, who on earth do you trust other than yourself?
Yeah. And importantly, at the same time, Joel's watch breaks. We talked about how time's important, and we'll get into this later, but this is metaphorically and literally the moment where time stops for Joel. We get a jump forward 20 years, and Joel is just like this hard-ass survivor guy now, and he still wears his broken watch, and we know implicitly that he hasn't recovered.
Yeah. And time stands still because in 20 years, he seemingly hasn't aged at all.
he's a little more salt and pepper, but that's about it. But what's important about this intro is that it establishes what kind of game we're playing. This isn't going to be a zombie game. This isn't going to be a shooter game. This is a game that's based entirely in some masterful storytelling and some incredible character work. And so that's what we want to focus on throughout the cast is the characters and the ways in which they interact with the player, the ways in which they make you engage with the themes of the game.
So 20 years later, there's kind of a tutorial section where you meet a character that is supposed to be Joel's partner in this situation, which, as I was playing the game the whole time, goes like, oh, so, is she gonna die now? That's someone over there. Maybe that person will kill her. You just get the feeling.
Yeah, she's not on the cover.
Again, a little bit as this game has been out and I've seen it. I knew the game was about Joel and Ellie. Kind of felt like this character was going to die, but she's just there to die. So Joel has more bad stuff that happens in his life.
I don't know if I agree with that entirely. I think she's there as sort of a placeholder for Ellie, because you kind of have to wonder like what Joel's been doing for 20 years, and he has a real connection to Tess.
There is an element too of the reason, because Joel does not want to take Ellie. Ellie is the character thrust upon him.
Yeah.
To fare to the other side of the country, and Joel at the beginning is very like, fuck no, I'm not doing this. And Tess, it's almost like a do it for me. And then she dies, and it's like kind of a, maybe Joel's doing it out of a sense of obligation for a dying wish.
Yeah, I'm not saying they spend a lot of time putting Tess together as a character, despite what I said earlier about this being a character story. Tess isn't really one of the characters. She's there for narrative reasons. She's there to be like, this is what Joel's been up to. She's very different from what we see in the intro, so we're thrust into a new world the second we see, Tess come out. And then she's there to transition Joel into traveling with Ellie. And then she dies because she's no longer narrative relevant.
Yeah, and the game, it also kind of, addresses one of the game's strengths, which is there's kind of these walking and talking sections. Even when you're doing, in my opinion, at parts, not the best gameplay sections. I actually like the gameplay for the game, but there's a lot of little sections of kind of like just moving boards and crap. Those sections aren't as bad when you have a character to walk and talk with. And so the game kind of, especially the early part of the game, gives you different groups of characters to kind of walk and talk with, learn their stories, and kind of reflect different things in the society. So even though Tess is the tutorial section, pretty much I think what I would almost call like level 1 of the game starts off with a character named Bill. At this point in the game, Joel comes off as kind of the aggressive loner type. Like, he can do it himself. He doesn't need anyone kind of shit. And so then the first character you meet is an even more extreme example of that.
Yeah, he is.
So this is kind of the first time it's just you and Ellie traveling. And again, good fun walking and talking. But before you meet Bill, they actually kind of show his character through the environment, which I think is one of the better examples of writing in the game. You see all these traps. Like, the first thing you see is little wire traps, explosions.
Yeah, you see bodies, like, caught in barbed wire and stuff.
Yeah, you get this idea. And then one of the first kind of cool gameplay things they do that transitions right into you meeting Bill is you walk in, and a little noose goes around your ankle, and a refrigerator pulls you upside down in the sky.
Yeah, they deer trap you.
I don't know how that's possible. Maybe it is possible. Seems weird to open a door and then you're just upside down, but I'm not here to examine that.
Sorry, I'm just thinking if I could build it in Minecraft. Probably.
That's yeah. Bill's really good at Minecraft as his character.
Yeah, Bill's whole character's Minecraft.
And so you do a scene. It's actually a really cool scene where you're protecting Ellie and yourself by shooting zombies upside down with infinite ammo. Pretty fun bit. And once you escape, you meet the character Bill and you run back, and it doesn't super matter. But first thing that happens with Bill, who is pre-established, knows Joel, and Joel describes he owes me some favors, handcuffs Ellie to a pole, and is basically like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah. And this is also like the first, I think, really good Ellie scene is you think Ellie is like this helpless little girl, and Bill just handcuffs her to the wall, and then she pulls that pipe out of the wall and beats him with it. And like, that's a really good reversal of expectations there.
It has maybe my favorite line in the game is Joel's trying to calm Ellie down, and he's just like, what was that psycho girl? And he goes like, fuck you, you cuffed me.
It's so good. Oh, Ashley Johnson is an incredible voice actor for Ellie. She does an insane work on this character.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest strengths of the game is I like almost all the voice acting, but Troy Baker as Joel and Ellie as Ashley Johnson, I think, do a really incredible job of like kind of conveying the emotions and, even the smallest of lines. But I think what's interesting about Bill that we start here is Ellie's the one who goes, we're here because you owe Joel some favors, just kind of parroting what Joel said. And Bill just is kind of like, flabbergasted, like, what the fuck are you talking about? I kind of like that you never actually know why Joel thinks that. Like, what Joel did that would incur a favor from Bill.
Yeah, it's kind of implied that he doesn't owe him any favors, and Joel's just doing the very Joel thing, doing the only thing he can. You know, he's like, we need a car. Bill has a car.
Yeah,
I mean, he might actually be lying to Ellie. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
He might literally just be saying he owes me some favors just so she'll come with him, and maybe that'll work out. Because that's what Joel does. He doesn't really plan. He just does whatever he thinks is right in the moment.
Yeah, and then the things he says is like, you set off all my traps, you half break my shooting arm.
Yeah, Bill says this.
Sorry. And then you go into his little lair, and he's like, don't touch my fucking stuff. And it's just like boxes and boxes and boxes of fucking magazines and shit. And like, it just looks like, a crazy person's garage.
Yeah, and you're overwhelmed at this point, I think, with like Bill's sort of aloneness in here. You've had to go through a gauntlet of traps just to get to Bill, and now you're like, oh, I need favors from you. He's like, I don't owe you anything. Stop touching my stuff. Why are you here? You know, all these things, and you get this real feeling that like the only thing in this town is Bill and his stuff, and the only reason you're here is because you need his stuff.
Bill really comes off like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone if you had to do it for 30 straight years.
Yeah.
And then after a while, he just becomes kind of a crazy, loner lunatic. And he's one of, a lot of characters say it to Joel, but he's the most adamant of, why the fuck do you have this little girl around? Why are you, it's going to get you killed, Joel, if you drag a 14-year-old girl with you. And you know that. We also see kind of how Joel reacts to trauma, because Tess, who he's clearly close with, Bill goes, I can't believe Tess went along with this idea. And Joel says, it was her idea. And doesn't say, she also died. He just pretends that she's not dead around Bill.
Yeah, I don't think he ever tells Bill that Tess died.
Yeah, never acknowledges it.
But Bill brings her up several times, and every time Joel just kind of wipes it off.
Kind of hand waves it away.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to talk about the people who died in his life. Because he doesn't trust like that. And so we go through this town of traps with Bill. Gameplay's pretty fun. Bill gives us like explosives and Molotovs and a shotgun. And Joel builds his arsenal, and you get to the end, and you find the truck that you're looking for. It's got the battery, and the battery's missing. And while you've been going through the town, there's been little things like, why is this ladder here? Bill talks about having had a partner, but he doesn't talk about who that was, and he just says they're gone. And we get to the truck, and the battery's missing, and we move on into a house, and we find in the garage a working truck with the battery that Bill's missing. But before that, we go into the house kind of running from zombies, and everybody's sort of arguing. They've gotten to a bit of a spat, and then they all fall silent as the camera kind of pans to the side, and you just see somebody hanging in the corner. And Bill is visibly upset, and he's like, that's Frank, my partner.
So I think it was kind of interesting because earlier, Bill lies to Joel. Bill says, when talking about why he shouldn't have Ellie around, was, I had a partner, and it basically wasn't worth my time. I'm not going to survive without him.
Yeah, he was like, it was a good for nothing.
So, yeah, I sent him out the door. After you see the, hanging body, Bill cuts the line, it falls to the ground, and you can, search around the house. And then you find a note that basically says, I can't deal with you anymore. Right, I can't be around your, you're basically just someone left Bill because he's, a crazy person,
Yeah, this man Frank was like, hey Bill, I can't deal with this relationship anymore. You are just too much, and I'm leaving. And you realize that Bill lied to both of you. That he didn't kick Frank out. Frank couldn't stand Bill because Bill couldn't return his affection in the way that a normal person might be able to. Frank needed something from Bill, but all Bill could do was think about himself, his stuff, the surviving. Bill has nothing in his life, and the one thing he did have, he couldn't appreciate enough, and that person left and ended up dead.
It's also really interesting to kind of think about what, where was Bill before all this? Because while you're playing with Bill, he's just talking to himself all the time. He's just exhibiting patterns of someone who would be essentially in solitary confinement. Like, is this because he's been alone so long that he's kind of turned into this sort of person, or was he always kind of, the paranoid type to the point he drove away the only person who's close to him in his whole life?
Yeah, and we don't really get the answer to those questions, but this is something the game does. It makes you ask those questions. You look at Bill, and it's not a complete story. You leave, you take the truck and you leave, and you just drop Bill off on the highway, and he goes back to his solitary life. And while it was safe with Bill in his little fortress, you never have a feeling like maybe we should have stayed there. Maybe we shouldn't go on this journey, because you don't want to be like Bill. You don't want to be alone, and you think if you stay there, you would be alone, even if he was there, because Bill is the ultimate survivor. He'll live there for as long as he can, for as long as he can mentally sustain himself. And then he'll die, and probably no one will know.
And so one of the things I think the game does pretty good is there'll be little things you can interact with that kind of do additional cutscenes. And sometimes the choice to interact with those things is your own sort of storytelling. Joel finds the note, and you can give it to Bill, or you can not give it to Bill. Because if you read the note, it's pretty fucking mean about Bill. Like, maybe, after someone found their partner dead, you don't want to give him a note saying, he hates your guts right to the end.
His last words were just calling you a piece of shit.
Yeah, but maybe you're like, but if anyone should read this, it probably should be the one person they were close to. And Bill pretty much just rejects it. Like, this is one of the things I like about kind of these focuses on the characters who aren't just Joel and Ellie. We get a lot out of the way Bill lives his life, and the pros of it are he is better at surviving than most of the people that we meet. But he is maybe the least happy of any of the people we meet.
Well, most of the people we meet we kill, but...
Fair enough.
Yeah, but Bill is the ultimate survivor. He's better than Joel can be, because he rejects everything that's not survival. Bill is incapable of learning and changing and growing. He's just going to be there forever, alone, surviving. And you see echoes of that in Joel's character, but you also see that Joel is capable of change, is capable of understanding things, because originally he didn't want to travel with Ellie, but Tess talked him into it, and once Tess died, he continued that journey. He's already changing as a person. Time might have stopped when Sarah died, but when Ellie shows up, she even comments, she's like, your watch is broken. And it's an offhand remark, but it's a reminder that the Joel that used to exist when Sarah was alive is dead. But this Joel's still alive, and there might be something there worth saving.
And there's kind of an element of Joel influences Ellie, and Ellie influences Joel. Ellie becomes more of, the sociopath archetype, for lack of a better word, and Joel becomes better at opening up. An early example of kind of Ellie being influenced by Joel is right after that. So when you get the car and they're driving away, and she stole porn from Bill. And what fucking sociopath would steal porn that she throws out the window for no reason from a guy who has nothing? She stole it for a bit to be like, I stole his porn because he only helped us get a car. What a fucking jerk. Yeah. I'm so mad at Ellie for doing that.
Yeah, Ellie's pretty mean to Bill, and it's somewhat understandable because Bill is an absolute heel, but at the same time, all that man has is his stuff, and you stole his porn? Come on, Ellie. That's I wouldn't be surprised if Bill came after us for that.
Yeah. Last of Us 3. Bill's just mad at Ellie.
Bill's vengeance.
Yeah. We're going to focus more on what happens with Joel and Ellie later. We're kind of skipping over some stuff because it's easier to look at that chronologically to kind of see their character development. Because the characters who aren't Joel and Ellie are kind of what the game's about, in the story and the philosophical implications of that, whereas Joel and Ellie are their own kind of set of narrative device.
Yeah, the other characters are there to explain the theme of the game. They're really there to show you what the developers and the writers are trying to say. Where Joel and Ellie's journey is is supposed to be you moving through the world that they've created. It's they tell you the themes, and then through Joel and Ellie, you experience those themes in a more fundamental way. But all the characters are sort of there as like signposts, you know. So I think it's best to start with them. And the next major characters are Henry and Sam, and these characters are clearly supposed to be foils for Joel and Ellie because Henry is an older man and Sam is his little brother. It's a man traveling with the kid, and they have a lot in common. they start like fighting each other because they think you fight literally every human you see, but then once they realize that they're not here to kill each other, they back off and they have a moment and they decide to travel together.
So I think it's actually interesting with that scene because there's two things. There's the leading up to that scene and that scene that make the Joel didn't murder that guy a thing. This is the first time you're really killing humans. There's technically a part of the tutorial, but I'm going to wave my hand at that.
They're not really humans. They're like police grunts. They're like government guys.
And yes,
they're army men.
That was a
really
political
people.
statement. He said they're not really human.
They're more like pig people.
Yeah. They're, you just see marauders, Mad Maxian style. They fuck up your car and all that kind of stuff. And you get this, the danger in this area is mostly not zombies. There are some zombies in this area, but the vast majority of the combat in the city of Pittsburgh is with humans. And you jump through a window, and I think a guy attacks Joel first or whatever, but then Joel's like almost murdering him, and the kid pulls a gun out on Joel, and the guy getting almost murdered is like, don't shoot him. He's just confused. And from what we've seen in this world, like, no one would do that ever, right? Like, it's probably after that scene, but there's a scene where, like, you're looking out a window, and, like, literally a tank pulls up to, like, a woman and a child, and just shoot her, and they go, I don't have anything on them. Next civilians to murder, and then just comically evil human on human crime, that kind of stuff. And it immediately establishes that the level of compassion and warmth these characters have that the other characters we haven't seen. Tess was Joel's partner, and
but
she's
was
kind
pretty
of
distant.
Yeah, and she's distant. Bill is distant. Everyone is kind of, no one seems like they're friends.
Yeah, every human you meet, you had to kill so far. And yeah, they've been mostly army guys, but like, they're still people.
Yeah.
This is a very shoot first, ask questions later kind of world. And in this case, Henry was like, no, don't shoot. It's the first time, it's really the first time somebody said don't shoot.
Yeah. And yeah. And you seem like kind of more compassion Henry shows to Sam than at this point Joel shows to Ellie. I mean, early, I know we're going to talk about Ellie and Joel later, but a lot of the early stuff is like, do exactly as I say and not any more or any less, and won't give her a gun and all that sort of stuff. Whereas Henry, even though he's Sam's brother, has taken on the role of the father, and he has to take care of him, and he talks to him in such a way that a father would talk to a son. A good example is they're in a toy place, and he's like, look at this little Gundam. And he goes, what did I tell you? Only bring what you need to bring. And I like that scene a lot because it is him being pragmatic, right? In the sense that we can't be having Gundams as we're running away from zombies, yeah. Right? But he wouldn't, what we've seen at Joel at this point is Joel would be like, put that down. He would say it in a less, he wouldn't be trying to teach a lesson. He's just like, you can't bring that. And that's the only thing that he would say. This is a character saying, I need you to understand the rules, so when, you're older, you will be able to do this as well.
You also get a feeling of, like, loneliness from these characters in a similar way that I think we felt with Bill, in that all they have is each other, right? They have what they can carry and nothing else, and their world has been reduced to that much, right? Sam just wants to take a toy from a toy store because he's a child, and Henry, for whatever, you could discuss if it's good reasons or not, but he just says, no, we take only what we need. We only carry what we need because we're in survival mode, and the only thing I want in this world is for you to survive. He doesn't say all of that, but that's the implication. Is like the only thing that's important here is that my little brother lives. You know?
And you see that later because there's a part where they get separated through, I'm not going to say Final Fantasy VII methods, but an arbitrary thing separates us, and Joel is separated from the other three of them. But Henry is kind of like, hey, I'm sorry, man, I can't help you, and then just bolts. And Ellie, in an endearing scene, says, no, I travel with you, and then jumps off and follows Joel.
She jumps back into danger.
And there's two things I like about that. One, it's like, I actually don't feel like, maybe some people got it, but I didn't feel like Sam and Henry betrayed us.
No.
I just felt like, yeah, that's what you would do in that scenario. Like, I can't blame him for doing that, because Joel would 100% do that.
Yeah. And Joel doesn't really blame them for it. He's mad about it later, but he doesn't really blame them. Yeah. Because, again, these are foils for our main characters. Like, they do the things we would do.
Yeah.
You know?
And Ellie goes with the thing that she, has come to be attached to in this universe, which is Joel at this point. Obviously, Sam and Henry have been cool people, but that's not been her reason for going forward at this point. And that's kind of the thing you see with a lot of people is, the people who are close to them, we gravitate to because it's so hard to build connections with anyone else other than through these, like, family ties, even when it's not family.
Yeah. They survive an encounter, they meet back up, and they have they work out their differences. They get to a fun scene where they're all just kind of sitting around like a living room, and they're eating food, and they're just talking. They're just having a good time. Like Joel's talking about how he had like a motorcycle that he drove around the country, and they're all just living it up. And Ellie goes into the other room, and Sam is like sadly counting the cans, like the food that they've acquired for the day. He literally says like taking stock, like he's doing inventory. And Ellie pulls out the toy that Sam wanted and is like, here, I got this for you. And Sam seems just completely apathetic to the toy, and it's not exactly clear why. He just seems like really sad and really unhappy, and Ellie just leaves. She tries to be a friend to him, but Sam is younger than her, and she's sort of trying to emulate Joel. She's trying to like be a grown up to Sam, but she can't. She can't comfort him, and she leaves. And then Sam like walks over and pulls up his pant leg, and we see that he's been bitten.
Something I was kind of thinking about with that scene is, first when we kind of see Henry and Joel just being friends, they're just talking about motorcycles. They're just doing Henry's on his side, like leaning on his arms and just doing kind of like a shooting the shit around the campfire, like true friend thing. And I felt like what I got out of Ellie in that scene was she wanted to be that with Sam, because maybe we could just travel all together.
Yeah.
We can just be, have that sense of community that, is so lost to us. And is like, look, I got you a toy. And she's like, she looks at Ellie and is like, how are you so brave? And it's interesting because he's like the one character who's not having fun. Like, he's the one who's focused on just the mess of that the world is, like, how do you cope with where we are? Versus Henry's like, when this is over, I just want to ride a motorcycle. Just that sort of whimsicalness that you kind of believe can't possibly happen.
Yeah, because these characters represent a certain idealism in the world. And to put, I guess, a fairly fine point on that, Sam is bitten. His fate is sealed. And in the next morning, Ellie goes in to be like, hey, come get breakfast. And Sam attacks her because he's turned in the night. We recontextualize the moment with her trying to give him the toy as like a little boy realizing he's gonna die. And he says nothing. He seeks no comfort from his brother or from the people that he's met. He just dies in his sleep in the next room, and then he wakes up as a zombie the next day. And Joel immediately pulls a gun on Sam, who's like attacking Ellie, and Henry pulls a gun on Joel and says, "That's my fucking brother." And Joel takes a moment. He's terrified because like Henry might shoot him, and he says, "Fuck it," and he levels his gun at Sam, and we hear a gunshot, but it's from Henry as he shoots Sam, his little brother, dead. And then he has a moment. He he's like, this is your fault, and he threatens Joel and Ellie, and they're like, no, it's not. It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. And Henry, in his last act on the earth, just puts the gun in his mouth and shoots himself in the head. And like smash cut, end of summer. This game is separated into seasons, and that's the end of summer. And summer is, of course, your most idealistic season. And it's the death of these two characters that really solidifies the world that we live in, because Henry and Sam are this idealistic pair. They're caring, they're kind, they're warm to each other in ways that Joel and Ellie can't be, because they're not family in that way. Joel lost his family. We don't know what Ellie had, but we know she has no one, right? These are people that have found a family, and they're trying to work that out. But Henry is a failed protector. He can't do what Joel does. He can't protect Sam. And in the same way, Sam is the boy who dies. Where Ellie, we should have mentioned this, but we haven't. Ellie is immune to the virus. That's why they're carrying her forward in the game.
I figured people knew that.
Yeah. But Ellie is immune, right? When she got bit, she must have gone through a similar event, a similar mindset that Sam did, but she woke up alive and Sam didn't. This is the pair that they could have been. Maybe this is what Joel and Sarah would have been. They wouldn't have been survivors in the same way that Joel and Ellie can be. And I think that's something of maybe a cynical ethos of the game, is that you have to be hard, you have to be a bit cold to survive in this fucked up world.
You can't trust anyone when every day you might need to kill to survive. You might need to steal to survive. You might need to commit any number of crimes just to make it to another day.
You may need to betray the people close to you.
Exactly.
Right? But that's the one thing that nobody does in this game.
Yeah.
You know? That's the one thing nobody ever wants to do in this game, because that's the real message, is, you know, what's important to us. But
with that though, I think is interesting though, because the second Sam dies, Henry just has a gun and he's just pointing. You know, it takes him about 5 seconds to decide to kill himself.
Yeah.
Right? He kind of thinks about shooting Joel and Ellie or whatever. And then he realizes within 5 seconds of his reason for living to be gone, there's no reason to live.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what kills the character, is just losing the things that are important to you.
Yeah, he has one thing that's important, and that's his brother, and his brother's dead. And I get, you know, this is speculation, but I get the feeling that that's probably not the first time he's thought about that. You're living in a world where you could die any day, where anything could go wrong and you could be eaten by zombies. He's probably had to think about, you know, what happens if his brother gets bit? What is he going to do? And he has a moment, you know, he points the gun sort of at the whole world, you know, at Joel and Ellie and everybody that failed him. And then he shoots himself, because the rest of the world doesn't matter. Sam's dead, and there's nothing left to live for.
This is one of the most powerful moments in the game for a lot of reasons, but also the smash cut is so good. A terrible thing happens, and we flash to Ellie and Joel talking normally, talking like nothing. The last thing you see didn't happen recently. I think a lot of other games, it's like more tempting to just kind of like draw it out and then have, you know, like Ellie freaking out over the dead body or just doing all this stuff. But no, instead we just go to, and then life moves on, right? Yeah. A lesser game would have had something like, Sam and Henry are dead on the floor, and Ellie looks at Joel and he'll be like, he owed me a pizza. But Joel doesn't get his pizza. And they don't get their companions to continue on with. They just have to trudge on and deal. And right in that next scene, there's a little gravestone that you can miss. It's off the trail. Where...
Yeah, I missed it. On my first playthrough, I'm pretty sure I never found this grave.
Yeah, and you talk to it, and then Ellie mentions Sam and Henry. And Joel's basically like, I told you. Stuff happens, you move on. And that's just in that, and when he says that, you're like, that's what Joel's been doing. Like, I knew he's been doing it, but he's teaching his ways to Ellie. That's what he did with Tess, right? Tess dies and they never talk about it. She tries to talk to it because, like, don't bring up Tess, like, several times. And it's just...
Yeah, you get to feel that he, like, blames Ellie for Tess's death. But he doesn't... And Ellie tries to bring up Sarah a couple times, and he's like, you don't talk about Sarah, you don't talk about Tess, we don't talk about Henry and Sam, you know? We bottle our trauma up and we soldier the fuck on.
Yeah, exactly. There's only really one more character thing, but it's much shorter because they don't spend a lot of time with it. But we go to Joel's brother's Tommy's little commune. I don't have a ton to say here. It's another character being like, Joel, why the fuck you got this little girl around?
Yeah.
And that we really don't spend a lot of time, but you see one of the only, like, society. Yeah. Like, the functioning society. They made a commune. Tommy's like, 1 second, I gotta go check on them finishing the generator.
Yeah,
you see them.
Yeah, they have, like, a water mill that they're working on. You know, they're trying to, like, generate power and just build a little society.
Yeah, and it's just kind of interesting to see. Again, another character, the reason for living. I get the feeling from the Tommy, it's like, you can live for more than one person. You can build these communities. Just, it's hard to do so.
Yeah. Through the characters that we've talked about, up to Tommy, we see a sort of broadening of the things that we care about, right? Bill cares about absolutely nothing, right? He only cares about himself and the things he owns. Where Henry cares only about Sam, only about his immediate family. And we identify most him with Joel and Ellie. And then we get to Tommy, who doesn't have, like, specific people. He has a wife, but she's not much of a character in that. She doesn't really show up too much. But he cares about his community, you know? So we go from absolutely no one to just our family to the community around us, building out on the things that we care about and building into the world things that you can care about. Because at the end of the day, we're still expecting Naughty Dog to tell us sort of what it is we care about in this world, right? And they're giving us these different examples of the different levels that people can have, the different capacities people can have for caring.
And this is interesting because Joel's trying to leave Ellie with Tommy, and she runs away. Yeah. She doesn't want to stay because as much of a dick as Joel has basically been to Ellie at this point, they have had a lot of time to become each other's, reason for existing in this world. And Joel tries to leave her behind, and when, she runs away and finds her, I think there's a little bit of Joel realizing, oh, I actually need Ellie just as much as Ellie needs me.
Yeah, because Joel's sort of a psychopath on his own. And he needs someone like Ellie, or like Sarah, to... Sarah's kind of a bad example, because he wasn't a psychopath as a man.
We assume, actually. Again... I don't know what his job is. I again assume it's chopping down trees with scissors.
It sounded like construction, but maybe it was like... Maybe he was burying bodies for the mob. We don't know. But the point is, Ellie calms Joel's destructive impulses. Where Joel is, to Ellie, someone who doesn't die. Because we meet Ellie and she has nobody. And she doesn't really talk about it yet. But we assume everyone in her life has died. Or left her, or passed her along, like the Fireflies are trying to do. And so, Joel to her is more than just a father figure. She's the man that won't die. She's the person in her life that won't leave her.
I think she even says so much. It's just like, you're still here.
Yeah, she does. Because they have a moment where, when she runs away, they find her in a house, and Joel's like, what are you doing? And she's like, you're trying to leave me. And Joel's like, well, why wouldn't you want to stay with these people? And she's like, I want to stay with you because you're the one that's still here. And it's important. We see why these characters matter to each other. And despite all their flaws, we can't help but relate to that emotionally.
Yeah, and kind of going back and, into these characters developing, there was a long time where Ellie starts off as just monkey see, monkey do. Simon says, I tell you, you do these things. And Ellie is arguing with Joel, like, we have a better chance of survival if you give me a weapon. And all through the Bill section, in the first half of the Pittsburgh section, Ellie can't fight. There's a part when your car crashes where Ellie learns to just jump and stab people like a weird goblin. And she seems really good stabbing people. I don't know if they bonded, and then he's like, you get a gun now? Or he was like, you're pretty murder-tastic. But... for a while, she's a burden. She is to Joel.
A thing to be protected.
A thing to be protected that's slowing him down, that makes his life harder.
But also gives his life meaning. Because he doesn't have a future without Ellie. And he knows that. In maybe deep down.
Yeah.
But Ellie is his reason for being. It hasn't said as much, but again, she's Sarah. She's his daughter now. And it's not... they don't have that relationship yet. But that's the place they're building.
In the first place, I think you see the beginning of this relationship is just, I think, a really excellent interlude after you do Bill, where you're just driving.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, she stole a porn magazine. That's not really the point of the theme, but whatever. But she's just kind of in the car, like, it's just a road trip. It just feels like this scene could exist before the zombie apocalypse. Like a thing that you would do with your dad.
Yeah.
As you just kind of like shoot the shit. It's not all about like, what are we going to eat? Where are we going to go? How? It's just, she has a magazine and she's making fun of it. And then later, when you get to Pittsburgh, after they survive combat ambush.
That ambush is important. We're going to skip over it, but there's a thematic importance to it in that it mirrors what happened with Sarah. They get into a car crash, and Joel has to, defend Ellie, because Ellie is defenseless at this point, partially because of Joel's inability to trust her with weapons, but they have a car crash. The same thing happens. But this time, it's people, and Joel is able to protect Ellie. Thematically they're the same thing, but where Sarah dies, Ellie lives. She's always the girl that lives. And I think
this Doctor Who.
Yeah, right. But I think it weighs. I think it weighs emotionally on the both of them, like the significance of that. Can you imagine if Ellie had died in a car crash in like the same way that Sarah died? Like, Joel would kill himself.
There's actually a really good kind of using a quick time in the battle where a guy has grabbed Ellie and you see the guy and you just have to walk up to him to hit X and it just like kicks him in the face. But you see that, so you as the character just immediately run as hard as you can, and it transitions right into like, a violent taking off of this guy, and it like feels like gameplay, but it also feels like it's the Joel like, holy shit, get off of her. Like,
yeah.
it conveys the emotion really well. And then in early Pittsburgh, you actually have, like, some levity. That's when Ellie first pulls out the joke book.
Oh, I love the joke.
And starts just reading jokes. And at first, Joel's just they're all bad puns. At first, Joel, is a little bit more scoffy, and as he goes, he giggles a little bit more, and, they it's kind of, will have comments like, that's a bad one, or something like that. And, kind of opens up, or, like, they go to a garden, and she's, like, looking at, like, gnomes and shit, and he just has stuff to say, right? Like, they just are having kind of a normal rapport that humans have. But at this point, Joel hasn't really been doing that a lot.
Exactly. So they have these moments of levity, and we see these characters, like, grow closer together over time. And there is eventually a moment where the two get separated.
By his fucking elevators breaking from under you and sending you into a dark underwater world. I mean, it's just whatever.
We had some flashbacks to FF7 Remake there. Because, like, we're just walking and, like, now we have to do a dungeon. It's not a particularly fun dungeon, but...
It's the worst one, arguably.
But it is thematically important because Joel and Ellie have been separated. Ellie is like, oh shit, there's guys up here, and, like, runs away, and Joel's like, I gotta get back up there now. I gotta go protect Ellie. Because he hasn't given her a gun or anything. She's just on her own against, like, dudes that are gonna kill her. So you fight through this dungeon, and you get back up there, and Joel starts fighting dudes, and he gets into hand-to-hand combat with a guy, and they fall off, like, a balcony into some water, and the guy starts holding Joel's head underwater. He loses his gun, and he can't fight back, and he's reaching for his gun under the water, and it's a long scene as Joel is just drowning, trying to get to his gun. And then we see a hand pick it up, and we hear a gunshot, and Ellie's standing there, and she shot the guy in the head that was drowning Joel. And the first thing she said, she, like, throws the gun down, she says, I feel sick. And Joel is pretty mean about this. He's like, you shouldn't have done that. He reprimands her. Because Joel's not a man that learns immediately. He's not a man that changes his ways in the moment that he should. He always comes back later to understand what he should have done. And this is the moment. This is the moment where their relationship changes forever, because Joel became the person that needed to be protected, and Ellie stepped up to do it. It's the moment where really she wins Joel's respect, even though he's kind of a dick about it. And it's the moment where Ellie understands the sort of the emotional burden that Joel has to carry, because he just kills people all the time. And I know that's maybe being a bit generous to say that he carries an emotional burden on that, but he doesn't feel good about it. He doesn't want to kill all these people. He just does it because that's what he has to. And Ellie experienced that for the first time.
It's arguable if you can tell he feels guilt, but there's a part where they're talking about the ambushers, and he's like, I used to be one.
Yeah.
And the way he kind of doesn't elaborate, you get this feeling that it's like, I wasn't proud of it. You know, it's just something I had to do, and I don't want to think about the time that I was just a marauder.
Yeah. And so they kind of become distant for a minute about this, because Ellie just knows that he shouldn't treat her like shit about this. And,
it's the hardest thing she's ever done in her life, I would imagine.
Yeah, and Joel's not very emotionally supportive. And so Ellie feels kind of betrayed, and they act super distant to each other, but we get to a moment where Joel finally is going to actually show her some trust. We see a change in Joel. And that moment is they're looking out over a bunch of guys. They got to do some gameplay now. And Joel's like, well, I'm going to make my way through there. And Ellie's like, well, what am I supposed to do? And Joel's like, you stay here. And she's like, no, that's stupid. Let me help. I can obviously help. And Joel's like, I know. Here's a gun. And he gives her a deer rifle, and is like, provide me cover fire. You know, you seem to be able to handle yourself. I've learned that you're capable. Here's a chance.
I think this is super interesting because Ellie just was experienced, you know, a sickening, horrifying moment of her killing the first person. And it's one of the first things that, even though it took him a second, kind of garnered the approval of the father figure, which is Joel, obviously, because that he starts trusting her. He trusts her with a gun. And he even says, you seem to know your way around a gun, right? It's not just, this is, you know, our best chance of survival. It's like, you've proven your worth to me. And the like worst thing she done has turned into almost like a positive Pavlovian experience, if you think about it in that way.
Yeah, because their bonding experience is her going to be sniping people.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because she needed that compassion after doing that, you know, terrible thing. But in some ways, she's, you know, incentivized to do the terrible thing more, to get that compassion that she's gotten from so little things from Joel.
Yeah, because we're establishing something of a codependent relationship. Ellie's going to become more like Joel. Joel's going to become a bit more like Ellie. And they're going to meet in the middle and be like a serious murder team. And
I think that's why it organically in the game, it makes sense for when she runs away. Because the codependence had started. And then it's like, you're just going to drop me off here?
At Tommy's house.
At Tommy's house. And Joel realizes, you know, that he shouldn't. And they just go off on their own to find the Fireflies together. And then you have another kind of long section of them kind of walking and talking. And they're even more friendly with each other. They're at a school campus on horses. And the game looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of them being like, her being like, what was a campus? What is this? And he's just kind of like explaining the world as it used to work.
Exactly. And so they're building trust with one another. They're opening up a bit and they're growing closer. And this is really important because they're at the place where they're supposed to drop off Ellie to the Fireflies, but there's no one here. And I think they're both kind of happy there's no one here, because that means their journey can keep going. But eventually goons kind of show up looking for them, and they get into a firefight, and Joel falls and is impaled by a piece of rebar through his midsection. And Ellie has to like literally drag him off the rebar and walk him slowly out the front door of the school, and she's shooting people along the way. And you're playing this is gameplay. You have to shoot people along the way, and you get out the front doors.
The screen's blacking out.
Yeah, the screen is going black, and as you get out the front doors, it fades away and cuts to winter. That's the end of fall.
Yeah, and then fall's after winter. Yes,
the fall.
It's another one of those, you know, pretty good smash cuts. Now, fall was weirdly way shorter than winter, or than summer. It felt like we didn't talk that much about fall, but kind of not a lot happens.
Yeah, fall is just Tommy and the school.
And that's kind of like how the rest of the game is, where all the sections are just kind of like one-off stories, and then we just kind of move on.
But it's at this point, we have to talk about winter, and in the same breath, we have to talk about the DLC. Because the DLC takes place in winter.
Now, for me going into the game, I was excited about winter because everyone really likes winter, and I didn't know why. And then you start off as Ellie, which I didn't know would happen, and apparently the people who created the game lied to everyone and said it wouldn't happen. So for a lot of people, it's surprising that you're going to be Ellie, and for a lot of people, they don't know if Joel is dead. The Joel could have just died right there.
Yeah, it is not immediately obvious.
Yeah, you're just hunting a deer. Like, the game, like, at that point can just be, now Ellie has to be self-sufficient. And that would have been a brave choice. They could have just done that, and I don't think... I think
the game, a different choice.
Yeah, the game we got is still good, but I think it's an interesting choice that they made. And I think it's really interesting because it's Ellie with a bow, and you have to hunt a deer, which at least I feel like probably represents innocence because the movie Bambi exists.
Maybe.
Because you have to shoot the deer a couple times with a bow, which is weird because one shots clickers. Like, please kill this deer. This like baby deer. And once you shoot the killing shot, it doesn't fall over dead. You follow it, and there's a trail of blood. And I really like this scene a lot because I think this is the best thing on all of winter, arguably. I feel like it represents Ellie's path towards kind of, the murder side of things instead of the I read funny joke poems.
Yeah, it's definitely Ellie embodying Joel because she's got to stand up and take care of both of them now. Joel's not dead. We find that out pretty quickly. She's looking she's trying to get food, but she finds an opportunity to get medical.
She's trying to survive is like the idea.
She's trying to keep them both alive.
Because that's, I think, a theme of the chapter is like what you do for survival. As Ellie follows the deer, people show up and are basically like, well, we also want the deer. We also want to eat. And this is interesting because Ellie's kind of in charge of the party at this point. Ellie could be like, well, let's split it, right? She might not be like, Joel would just say, fuck you and maybe kill you, right? But maybe Ellie does things different. But no, Ellie's just acting like Joel. Ellie's like, well, I killed it. Finders keepers, losers weepers. And then I think you just get attacked because winter has a weird amount of combat that's just thrown on you. But at some point, you're with Dave, the one other character in all of winter, and he basically says, hey, I know you're traveling with a crazy person that we kind of are trying to murder.
Well, he says like one of our groups was attacked by a crazy man traveling with a little girl, and he points at Ellie. And at this point, Ellie was kind of trusting him a little bit, but obviously that's been thrown out the window now.
And it's interesting because it feels like there is trying to establish a thing of trust. Because he also could just try to shoot Ellie and take the deer. Like, there's no shoot first here. There's we can figure it out.
Yeah. And he also, his associate shows up with a gun and he's like, don't shoot her. Don't shoot her.
Which also Henry said to Sam.
Yes. And he's like, give her the medicine that she asked for. And she takes the medicine and she leaves. And you get the feeling that maybe he really didn't. Maybe he was just trying to be nice. Maybe he's like, I've got some hard feelings, but it's not about you. It's just about that guy that killed all my friends. It's a little mini Survivor tale. But then we find out that he used Ellie going back with the medicine to track her back to Joel. And we have a very long combat section where Ellie has run away on a horse to lead them away from Joel, and then create an entire graveyard worth of bodies, and then
including a horse body,
all just to get captured by this guy. She's walking out the doors, and he comes up and just chokes her out, and she wakes up in a jail cell, and you're like, man, okay, this is going pretty far, but what's going on? And you see a guy right outside the jail cell, which is a weird place to do this, chopping up human bodies like meat. And you're just like, oh my god, they're cannibals. This is not good. But it doesn't really jive with the character David shown before, unless he's just like sort of a evil mastermind, just pretending like this psychopath pretending to be nice.
He really comes off like the cannibal from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who's just a cannibal but like weirdly polite, you know?
But then, Dave shows up and he shows up with food, and he's like, eat this, and she's like, is it people? And he's like, no, it's just deer, and she's like, fuck you, and eats the food.
And then if the game didn't need to make this character like more kind of transparently a bad guy so you don't have to feel bad for whatever happens to him in the next hour, he directly implies he wants to use Ellie for sex.
Yeah.
Who is a 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And that's my huge problem with this whole fucking plot, because every character we've met at this point feels like it's trying to tell us something about what it's like to live in the world of the zombie apocalypse. When he's talking about the cannibalism, says, we all need to survive, and that's as much as they go into it. But that's at least something, right?
Yeah, it's somewhat fair.
Yeah, it's winter, and she killed one deer, and it's like, that's the most meat we've seen in a while.
Yeah.
And that's the impetus of their meeting. And you can kind of understand where it's like, there's not a lot of deer for us to hunt. There's not a lot of just actual meat that we can put into our bodies. We just have to turn to eating people sometimes. And you can kind of do more with that where it's like, well, what is the cost of survival? You know, do you give up as much as Bill, or do you give up some of your humanity and start eating people's? But then you add, he wants to fuck a 14-year-old girl to it, and it's just like, there's nothing redeemable or exploratory of their lifestyle. They're just a comically group of evil people that I feel like are done that way, so you could just have Ellie fucking murder their guts out.
Yeah, and you just don't have to feel bad about it. And it's framed this way too. They're not trying to make a subtle point when they make them cannibals. It's like there's a butcher standing there just cutting people up. He like scoffs at Ellie and walks away in this dark, dank room in a prison cell, and then this guy comes on to her, and it's like, yeah, we're killing pedophile cannibals. That's our thing in the game, is like, oh, they're transparently evil, and there's no reason for that. It didn't have to be this like weirdly dark and unsympathetic. It's just nothing. Like, why is this happening?
Yeah, and if you don't have sex with me, I'm gonna eat you.
I will kill you and eat you if you don't do that. So it's unbelievable the direction they took with Winter, because that is the whole of Winter. Ellie breaks out, kills a bunch more dudes, and has the worst boss fight in the game. There's only 2 boss fights. One is just like a big zombie, and the other one is this guy who's like weirdly immune to Ellie stabbing him with a knife.
Yeah, it only takes 3 times.
Yeah, Ellie has never failed to kill anything with a knife by stabbing it once. And this guy sort of, he's literally hunting you through a steakhouse, if you get the symbolism.
And of course this boss fight is lacking even less subtlety, because they make you move around like the Silence of the Lambs to kill the fucking Buffalo Bill type. But I think the only thing that's going on here, like plot-wise, is just how they're both the characters are murder-tastic. Because when you finish the boss fight, she just starts hacking at his face like a machete, and when Joel wakes up from his Goku coma because the plot calls him, he just starts torturing people and then killing them for no reason.
I literally forgot the torture scene.
Yeah, because it's weird and forgettable.
Yeah, Joel's like, Ellie's not here. Time to torture folks until I find out where she is.
I mean, it is 100% just Wanted for the Liam Neeson one.
Yeah.
Taken. He's just going around Taken, and there's a part where someone gives him the information. The guy's like, he told you, man, what's going on? He goes, I believed him. And then he just kills him.
Yeah,
and
beats him to death with a pipe.
Yeah, and like, what if Zack Snyder made more Batman movies? Like, we fucking get it. Like, you're protecting your daughter, right? I get that there's this impulse, but like, it wasn't just like, didn't feel like just like that. It just felt like he just,
It wasn't violence for survival's sake. It was violence for violence's sake.
Yeah.
It was unnecessary, gratuitous violence. And that really encapsulates Winter as a whole. It really stands out from the rest of the game as like wholly different and almost completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
In almost everything it does. And all it really does is just establish their codependence a little bit more. Like, Joel shows up and pulls Ellie off the guy while she's while she's macerating his face with a machete, and he's like, shh, it's okay, baby girl. And he calls her baby girl because now she's like his daughter to him, because that's what he called Sarah, was baby girl. And so it's a moment where they grow closer, but they grow closer in a really grotesque way, I think. And I felt it was wholly unnecessary.
And they're never next to each other, so you don't, like, the closeness is just implied. Like,
it's a manufactured moment.
Exactly, right? It's just like, oh, pulling her from the brink of, the thing that she already did. But, like, it doesn't even talk about the theme in the game already of Joel's helping her get to this kind of brink, Joel's contributing to that. And I just don't feel like it has a lot to say, even though the very first scene of hunting the deer, it's a pretty good scene. The very last scene of saying baby girl, it's a pretty good scene. Everything in the middle is largely just a pedophile cannibal that I don't know why we had to be in the game. That was, dark enough.
Exactly. Right? And so we want to contrast this with the DLC, which is called Left Behind. Most people didn't play it, as far as I know. It came out like a year after the game. And it shows a little bit of Ellie's journey looking for medical supplies for Joel and the day she was bit, in which she's having a fun time in a mall with this girl, Riley, that she likes. And Riley was a character in her life before, and she left Ellie to go become a Firefly. And she shows up inexplicably in the middle of the night and is like, hey, Ellie, I'm back. You want to go hang out at the mall? And Ellie's like, wow, that's fucked up. Yeah, let's do that. So they go to the mall. They have a bunch of fun scenes together. They grow close, and they have some emotional moments. It's not really necessary to go into all of them. The point is, they have a complex relationship where Ellie is afraid of being abandoned by Riley, and by the end of it, Riley says, you know what, I'm not going to go back to the Fireflies. I was going to, but our time together was valuable to me. The time we spent tonight meant more to me than this arbitrary mission that I decided, and I'm going to stay with you, Ellie. And then they're attacked by zombies, and they both get bit. At the same time, this is intercut with Ellie walking through a barren mall in winter, just looking for any medical supplies to save Joel's life, completely alone.
Even when they're running away from the zombies in the past, I think there's a cool thing. It's a dumb thing because they turn the music on, and I don't care how old you are, you should not turn the music on around zombies, but whatever. But while you're running away through different parts of the mall that have, cool scenery, like, just kind of like a good throwback songs playing, and it doesn't feel like the game that we've come used to, if that makes sense. Where every time zombies show up, it's damp and gross, and there's notes everywhere being like, I hope my kids make it, and you find a note 2 feet later, they did not make it. But you're just kind of running away, and it just has kind of like a feel of a different sort of game or a different zombie plot.
Yeah, frankly, you think you're going to get away.
And then it ends in one of the more, the heaviest bits of both the game and the DLC, which is this idea of characters dealing with the fate of knowing they were bitten, because both of them know that they were bitten.
Yeah, because they get past the zombies, they live, they kill all the zombies, and Riley's like, Ellie, your arm, and Ellie realizes she's bit, and Riley holds up her hand, and you see that she's bit too, and you're like, fuck, they're both, I mean, it's the zombie apocalypse, they're both gonna die now, and Ellie's like, what do we do? She's like smashing shit and sad. And she falls down and she's almost crying. She's like, what do we do now? And Riley's like, well, we could take the easy way out. And she's holding a gun and she throws it on the floor. She says, I don't like the easy way out. Or we could just fight on. And Ellie's like, what are we fighting for? And Riley's like, we're fighting for every minute that we have together. We fight because that's what we have to do. Because that's what's meaningful. We could accept our fate and die here, or we can cherish every second that we can eke out of this mere existence. Because we could die today or we could die tomorrow. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather die tomorrow. And this is such, I mean, it's not only like sort of the thesis statement of the game, but this is such an important thing to Ellie's character, because most people probably would have just shot themselves because nobody wants to turn into a monster. But if they'd done that, they would not have known Ellie was immune. We wouldn't have had the one immune person in the whole world. The hope for humanity could have died there. But because somebody was there to say, no, every minute matters, we do have her. We have the rest of this game.
And if you contrast that, I think, with when Sam realizes he's a zombie, it's kind of interesting. Because Sam does in some senses, irresponsible thing of not telling anyone, I'm going to be a zombie. He's a child. I forgive him.
Yeah.
But, and part of it is because he says out loud, like, maybe it won't happen, just kind of, whatever thought. But he doesn't hang out with everyone as they're hanging out. He doesn't have that one night while they're all sitting in the living room area talking about riding motorcycles. He just sits in a corner and mopes, Like, I wonder if Sam cares about, I want everyone to just be happy tonight before we deal with this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or he's just being completely selfish, saying, maybe I won't turn into a zombie. And he doesn't have the same, reaction that Riley has of, let's just, spend tonight together. This is our last night on Earth together, And it's like a romantic and beautiful thought in a lot of ways in this horrifying world.
Yeah. Because this scene is also contrasted with Ellie moving through the mall in winter looking for supplies, and it ends with her finding these medical supplies and clutching them to her chest like thank God I can save Joel now. They're drawing a direct parallel to her experiences in winter to her experiences with Riley, and I've said, Joel's the one that lives because we don't get to see it, but she had to watch Riley die and her not, and she's living with that survivor's guilt in the same way that Joel had to watch Sarah die and he's living with his own survivor guilt. And together they found something. It's a little fucked up, but they found something together, and it's meaningful. And Ellie is working so hard to keep Joel alive because you could give him up for dead. It would be so easy. He's basically dead. He's in a fucking coma, and all you can find is a sewing kit to close his wounds. But every minute counts. And if she can keep him alive for any amount of time, it's worth doing. And this takes place in winter. This would have been so much better than this whole garbage about pedophile cannibals. It's still Ellie on her own, but we grow closer to both of them as characters, and we get backstory for Ellie. Everything comes into focus, and it transitions very well into the next season, spring, where there's some tension because Ellie thinks that Joel is going to leave her again at the Fireflies, because that's where they're going. Their journey is soon to end, and Ellie's being distant. And then they go through a building, and Ellie's like, oh my God, what's that? She starts running, all excited, and Joel chases her up through a building, and you can't see what she's looking at, but she keeps being like, oh wow, this is incredible. And you go upstairs, and the wall of the building is gone, and you see the most iconic scene in the game, which is a herd of giraffes moving through the city. And it's this beautiful, whimsical moment that they both just sit and take in. And you, as Joel, you're playing Joel in this, you can stay there as long as you want.
Sorry to cut you off, but that works so good with the thing they were saying is, fuck what they do with Winter, make it the DLC, because the last thing that happens in the fucking DLC is every second matters. And then you just have you have a moment that is purely just, we're sitting together watching these giraffes, and we will hold on to these seconds.
Yeah, because you have to do an input. You're leaning up against a rail, just looking at the giraffes, and Ellie's petting the giraffe, and you as a player have to do an input to end this moment. You have to step away from it, so you can sit there as long as you want, and it really makes you sit with that. I'd be like, well, how long can we live in this moment together?
Versus where with the Winter they did go with, the only thing I can think about is someone going to try to fuck these giraffes?
But we do have to move on. For all intents and purposes, we could stay here as long as we want, but the journey's not over. It's a game, it's a life, we have to keep going. So we press our buttons, we move on, and we go meet up with the Fireflies. And their future is uncertain at this point. Ellie, they're trying to make a cure out of Ellie, And Joel doesn't really know what that entails. And he's sitting in a hospital room when Marlene, who showed up at the beginning of the game, who was originally there to take Ellie, but couldn't for reasons, is like, well, they're prepping her for surgery. They're gonna take the cordyceps out of her. And Joel's like, but it grows all over the brain. And Marlene's like, yeah, we're gonna have to remove her brain.
So the ending has some, like, the absolute best parts of the game and then also the worst parts of the game. Because this is a very interesting, like, concept of the game, is what if the only reason you lived could save everyone else's life? And that's, like, a really interesting thing that, like, weighs on, like, even not just Joel, but you, the character, or you, the person playing the game. So to completely undercut this point, here's an assault rifle we just gave you. Mow down everyone on the way to the fucking surgery room.
Yeah, Joel does not take the news well. He goes pretty commando on these guys pretty quick. As soon as he finds out Ellie's gonna die to make this vaccine, Joel uses his full arsenal of weapons to make that not happen.
And just like Joel can't let go of Ellie, they know the player's going to have trouble letting go of murdering every single person you see. So after they make you murder everyone, you can probably run past them, but they gave you an assault rifle. I don't think they want you to run past them.
I don't think you can.
You can run past everyone in the game.
I guess.
Yeah, that's the only way we can speedrun. You get to the room where they're operating on Ellie, and it's the final boss fight of the whole game. A doctor shows up and puts a scalpel towards you. He has no attacks. And you have to kill him. If you just try to, like, grab Ellie and leave, Joel just fucking stabs him. And then you pick up Ellie, and the game ostensibly is over here in terms of there's literally a little bit of forward they make you push later, but for the most part, there are no more button inputs.
Yeah.
And Marlene shows up and basically pleads with Joel to consider the rest of society versus the one thing that he cares about. And I did just kind of make fun of the fact that you just mow down a bunch of people in the hallways, but there are a couple of voice notes you can find from Marlene, and they actually have Marlene saying, I want Joel around because he's one of the only people who can consider the moral implications of killing this girl. So the game makes you think about it for a bit, and I think in a good way on this sort of decision. And then when Marlene is confronting you, you have no choice because it's just a cutscene. Joel just kills Marlene under the pretense, you might follow me.
Yeah.
And it's just that sort of like, it's really interesting because there is, you can have this debate or whatever about how much should Joel, as a character, be considering the fate of humanity? And he clearly doesn't.
No, he does not.
At all. This is the only thing that matters to him, and he will do literally anything to protect it.
And so he does. He picks up Ellie, he walks out, he kills Marlene so nobody can follow him, and they leave. He takes the hope of humanity and leaves with it, because to him, it's more precious than that. It means more than all the world combined. And so we get to the ending of the game, and it's just Joel and Ellie having a walk, and Joel's like, you remind me of my daughter. You two would have been good friends. And Ellie's like, sure. And she seems kind of distant. She basically confronts Joel. Joel's like happy-go-lucky at this point. He's happier than we've ever seen him in the game, because now it seems that Joel has a future. He can continue on because he has Ellie. But Ellie has been taken away from what her purpose was. She wanted to be a vaccine. She wanted to do that. And she didn't know she'd have to die for it, but she'd willingly make that choice. And her future is uncertain. It's just following Joel into nowhere, into whatever adventure they get up to. But that's not like a goal. That's just, to her, it's become surviving. They've really flipped roles. And so she takes this opportunity to bring up Riley. She says, I used to have somebody in my life too. Her name was Riley, and we both got bit together. And I wanted to die, and she said, no, let's just be all poetic and like lose our minds together. And Ellie says, Riley died that day, and I'm still waiting for my turn.
And then says, Joel, promise me that everything you said about the Fireflies is true, because she was inoculated, or she did not know Joel took her out of this hospital.
Yeah, I skipped over it, but Joel basically lies to her and says, oh, they had a bunch of people. They didn't need you.
And the music, swells. And Joel looks at her and says, I promise. And then the game just ends. And that's the last moment of Last of Us.
Yeah, well, Ellie says one more thing, right? It zooms in on her face.
Okay, yeah.
These incredible faces that they've crafted. We haven't talked about this yet, but her face is unreadable. You cannot tell if she believes Joel or not. And she just says, okay. And the game ends. And that's it. Fade to black.
There's a lot of things to say about the ending. A lot of people have said a lot of things about the end of this game. And even though I think some of the parts of the ending are rushed, this part of the game, I think, is perfect. Because we go so abruptly from, oh, she's going to have to die from that, to immediately dealing with that, to characters, the weight of it being on the characters' minds. And no one has time to really think about it. No one has time to consider it. And then the game ends, and then it's left for you to marinate on Joel's decision, not just to save her, but to lie to her. And also, the same with Ellie. You don't know how she feels. And I think one of the things that's so good and so, heavy about this scene is Ellie being like, I've basically felt survivor's guilt because I survived and my friend didn't. And how can I possibly live in a world where me living dooms everything else in the world? Every other human is doomed because I didn't die. And
I think this is important because at this point, we haven't played the DLC, so this is the first time she actually talks about her past with Riley, about getting bitten, about having survivor's guilt. And you know that Joel feels at least guilty about, not saving humanity. You know that he feels guilty about lying to her, and he's unwilling to put that on her. Right? So when she says, swear to me that everything you said was true, he goes deeper into the lie because he's not protecting her from the world anymore. He's protecting her from himself. He knows how shitty he is, and he knows that the only thing he cares about is Ellie's survival and Ellie's protection, and he's protecting her now from himself.
And Joel also echoed this kind of thesis of the game, in my opinion, that the DLC also said, is before she confronted him, he said, I know it doesn't seem like it, but you always find a reason to fight.
Yeah.
And the way Joel says it, it's almost like this is the time he has codified his personal philosophy and the way he lives in this world and why he lives in this world.
Yeah.
And there's no gray area for him. It is crystal clear that to him, I think, Ellie's most important.
Yeah.
Because it's my life in this world.
And I think what's most important here at the end of it is what you said before, is that the game doesn't give you an answer to your questions. It leaves you wondering. You don't know if you agree with Joel's decision. You don't know if Ellie believes him. You don't really know anything. You're just left with the devastating moral implications of this world. This story that they've told. These characters whose story isn't done, but this is all you get to see. And that's really where Last of Us as a game shines, is in the storytelling, in the masterful character work. This game has the best writing I think I've ever seen in a game. And the way it makes you grapple with the world that they build and the characters that live in it and the moral implications of everything they do is incredible. They always make you question what you feel, how you would react, what you would do in a situation. You don't just play this game, you really get into Joel's shoes, and you always question, would I be a Joel? Would I be an Ellie? Would I be something else? Would I be a Sam or a Henry or a Bill?
And the game makes you look back at every character you've met and consider which life would be the best life.
If any.
If any, right? What's the best way to proceed in a world where the rules disappear overnight?
Yeah. At the end of the day, the question that it's asking is, what's important? What do you live for? What would you die for? What is most important to you, and how far are you willing to go to protect that? This game still isn't without its flaws, and I think we should talk about that now. So, Joe, you had quite a few notes on that.
So I really, really do like the ending. I think it's like the actual ending. The ending cutscene, I think, is one of the best cutscenes in the game. But after you spent this whole game kind of like seeing characters and how they live in this world and like the nuance of it, like maybe like do that with the Fireflies instead of just like walk around with a machine gun and mow everyone down. And it's kind of how I feel about the last two seasons, Winter and Spring, is you lose kind of the thread of the rest of the world, because now it's cannibal pedophiles and a nameless kind of or faceless organization that really should be there to represent humanity, because you're choosing Ellie over humanity. And you get some notes from Arlene's in the video notes or the voice notes, but you don't just see the everyday people and their excitement for a world without a fucking zombie apocalypse. Instead, you get, man, we've been really kind of doing story gameplay. So they just force kind of combat scenes out of nowhere a lot. Like, yeah, I understand it. You can make a logical combat scene of Joel killing Fireflies on the way to Ellie. That doesn't have to be bad, but you can maybe have them have interesting conversations as you walk up on them instead of you just mowing them down with an assault rifle.
Yeah, or just have something before it, right? There's like a cutscene before it that just gives Joel his motivation. They just say, hey, we have to kill Ellie for the thing, and he's like, gonna kill all of you now. And there's no building to it. It just happens. And they really could have taken some time to make you stew on that choice a little.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, we mostly focused on story because it is the interesting thing about the game. But also, I like most of the gameplay, but there are definitely critiques of the gameplay that kind of pull from the story. There are really good elements. Like, I think it's really cool how all of your combat kind of informs Joel's character in your eyes. You can just sneak past people and live a less murder-tastic life. Or you can just be setting everyone on fire.
Yeah, that is...
You can be sneaking up on people and crushing their heads with bricks. You can do, and every little bit of it kind of adds to the flavor of, as his idea of Joel is almost a trained killer in one sense of the word. And then you have stuff that are the non-combat parts of the game, which is of two things: gathering, or little Zelda puzzles where you push blocks, or sorry, more realistically, move planks and ladders.
Yeah.
I think those have good elements in the sense that you can talk with Ellie and move, or whoever is traveling with you at the time, and have kind of good, maybe character building, story building, world building, stuff on the walls to talk about, little scenery. But also, there just comes the point where combat's not happening, and you just start looking at your feet for fucking ladders. And, it's not complicated. It just feels like it kind of slows you down. It is even worse when you get to water, where you have to find a pallet every single time. Use the bad swimming controls to get it to Ellie, and then move her to where the game can continue. And it just, really slows everything down.
Yeah, it's pretty unnecessary overall. I understand they're trying to do a thing where, there's two of you, and they're trying to make you cooperate to overcome small obstacles, but it feels pretty unnecessary most of the time, and could better be served with just more voice lines or something.
Yeah, or just the slow parts of the game are Ellie reading a joke book is good. Ellie reacting to walls are good. Most combat feels pretty logical, except for sometimes the combat shows up too abruptly to end an important scene. One thing we talked about while playing the game was when Joel tells Ellie, I'm going to stay with you, and you don't have to stay with Tommy after she ran away. It just immediately goes into combat, and it feels like that scene could have a little bit more room to breathe, but the game is afraid of being well, if the players aren't doing anything, they're going to get bored.
Yeah, and the game also has an interesting, I think sort of a double-edged sword in its gathering mechanics, which, on the one hand, I really like the way they did inventory, because they keep your inventory very small, so that when you pick up supplies, you can only pick up a very small amount of them, incentivizing you to craft them into weapons, so that you can collect more of them when they become available. And then you can only carry so many bombs and Molotovs, So you're incentivized to use those instead of hoarding them for like when you might need them. You know, the classic player problem. And so you get this loop of like collecting, crafting, and using your items throughout the game in a way that like most games would just let you hoard kind of as many grenades and stuff as you want. But because you have this very limited inventory, the developers can never trust you to actually have the resources to like get through a room. So you're collecting stuff throughout the game all the way to the end. I think you get the last pliers, which upgrade your workbench in like I think winter.
I think it's summer.
Yep. It's definitely
or spring.
It's
it's
definitely
spring.
not summer.
I think it's in spring. I think it's the beginning of spring.
Yeah.
There's a workbench.
You get it in spring, and then you just do the one Firefly fight, and you're done. And it's just, why would you do that? Why would you put all this so late? The game should just be narrowing its focus and letting you get through it, but it's limited by the crafting system, and then they don't know if you have stuff or not, if you can get through it. So they have to ask you to keep crafting, and it becomes a real burden after a while.
Like, it feels so weird. It's like, here's your last crafting bench, so you can maybe get a scope to hunt a giraffe, I guess? I don't know. Here's an assault rifle. This is reminding me of a lot of points that we can do in a lightning round. You want to do a lightning round now?
I would love to do a lightning round.
So when you're doing your gathering, a lot of times, other characters in other rooms having conversations, and the sound mixing is done where it's just quieter when they're farther away. What the fuck is up with that?
Yeah, that's super annoying. I think they're trying to do a thing where they have, you know, like dynamic voices and stuff. Things get quieter as they get distant. And that's cool in a vacuum. But when you're in a house and you're like, I want to loot this room, but somebody's in the other room trying to talk to you, you can't hear them. And it's really annoying. They should just have it play universally.
Yeah, no one's going to be like, my realism is broken.
Oh, my realism.
And if they're worried about their realism broken, maybe don't have everyone leave around notes that describe everything they were doing seconds before they die.
It's like a fucking Fallout game in here. You just 100 skeletons. Every time you see a body, you're just like, I bet that guy wrote his last thoughts down for us to read. And they always did.
Yeah, if you're getting chased by zombies, put the pen and paper away.
Yeah, that's why you died.
And like, for a while I was like reading them because they get good flavor building, but then you get to a college and one is literally like, they won't let me smoke pot because of the zombies. And I'm like, cool, done reading these.
I would hope they'd let them smoke more pot because of the zombies.
Yeah, like, it's pretty reasonable.
I don't think they can smell.
I got no joke for that.
Last of Us 3 smellers.
I don't know why Joel makes garages look like a big fucking deal, because the second in your alley, garage doors are easy as shit.
Yeah, it's insane. Every time Joel has to pick up a garage, it feels like it's 1,000 pounds. Like he has to get something under it or he can't get through. But like no one else has that problem because that's not a real problem.
Yeah,
It's like
they're designed to be open.
Yeah, it's a manufactured puzzle by the developers to be like, just make Ellie get a cart for you so you can get under there. It's like, no, just lift the garage like any normal person.
I know I've already complained about it a little bit in the gameplay, but like, for the love of God, stop making me go underwater in video games. There's literally several rooms that you have to swim to through tiny holes to get craftable items, and you're running out of air, and it's like, just don't put shit underwater. Or put underwater.
Yeah, just don't. There's nothing to say to that. Just, games, stop doing underwater stuff.
And then you get down there, and then you get pills, which also kind of don't do anything, because there's like one good upgrade, and it's Shivmaster. There is a health upgrade. I don't think you really need it, because most of the rooms you die, you get clickers.
Yeah, you don't really ever upgrade much, you know? And I think that's by design. You're not supposed to get a ton of upgrades, but like, most of them are garbage anyway, so you don't really care if you do or not. Your progression comes from the weapons you get.
There seems to be only two real boss fights. You fight a bloater in a gymnasium and a cannibal pedophile in a steakhouse. And they're both really bad, in my opinion. The bloater isn't as bad, but like the first time I had a tiny bit of trouble, and then I came in and I threw 2 cocktails and 1 shotgun, and he just died. And the other guy you sneak up on 3 times and like doesn't die to knife wounds 3 times. And like they don't really offer like any storytelling. And so if you're not gonna like have good boss fights and have so few of them, like maybe just write like one of the cool set pieces you stopped doing halfway through the game.
Exactly. I think the bloater was interesting But they're just set piece fights later. That's all they are. They show up sometimes.
Yeah, like, bloaters keep showing up. Like, I think the cool thing about the bloater fight is you walk in and it's a gymnasium, and it has, like, a cool aesthetic and stuff.
Yeah. But you think they're going to kind of be, like, enemies you'll see later, but you really don't. You know, only a couple of times. I think there's only, like, 4 bloaters in the whole game.
Another problem I had with the later in the game is early in the game, you have all these really good combat set pieces, like being upside down and shooting people, sniping people when you're protecting Sam and Henry, running away from the tank that's shooting you, pushing your car and fighting zombies off. But later in the game, you get to Winter, and like the only kind of set piecey fight is you run away with a horse and then your horse gets shot. It's literally holding the forward button, and there are no set pieces at the end of the game except for, I guess, when you walk in the doctor, but that's that combat, that story. So we had really good combat ideas early in the game, and then the game gets really more focused on combat, but it's worse and less interesting. There are one-use disposable weapons everywhere. One's a brick, one's a bottle. One's strictly better, and I'm angry that the other one exists because they're just as prevalent.
Yeah, I have really strong feelings about this. You really shouldn't ever pick up a bottle. They're useless. They're just not as good as bricks. Brick you can fight with. A bottle you can just make noise, but bricks also make noise, which just never pick up a bottle. Just don't do it. The bricks are everywhere. Take bricks.
When you're with Bill, he takes you to a bus parking lot where like a high school or middle school is, and it's just a giant parking lot full of all the buses. And there's a house at the edge of the parking lot, and its driveway goes into the bus parking lot. That's not how you build houses. You can't do anything. There's so few things you're allowed to do in 50 feet of school ground. You wouldn't have your house on school ground where you can't get to the road. Just not how houses are made.
It really just, there's no road. It's just a parking lot out of your driveway. Can you imagine?
Yeah, like, for a game that most of the areas are designed, like, really well, that was egregious.
Yeah.
There are 2 characters in the game that are incidentally gay and has nothing to do with their personality. They just happen to be gay, and awesome, good job. Like,
yeah,
not a lot of games. This is also a while ago. It's 2013. Not a lot of people are doing that. Sweet. There's a couple things we didn't talk about in the game that definitely deserve praise, but they're like, so much of the value of this game I think is in the plot. But like, the music is great, art style wise, and the art itself, like the technical caliber of the art of a PS3 game, is gorgeous. Like, we just played Final Fantasy VII Remake, and they clearly have a more expensive art thing going on, but it looks like trash. Everything looks like dirt. Everything looks ugly. And you're like, well, you're in Midgar. Everything's supposed to look ugly. This game, you're in a zombie apocalypse, and everything looks beautiful.
Yeah, because it's, you know, it's a counterpoint to because they use their environment as a message, right? In FF7R, they have the most beautiful faces I've ever seen designed in a video game, and they're expressionless masks for the characters. Whereas in this game, the graphics, I mean, the remaster looks incredibly good. The graphics on the PS3 looks closer to a Telltale game. There's a significant difference, but like, even then, when you see Ellie's face at the end, her unreadable expression as she's like dealing with the fallout of Joel lying to her and trying to decide if she believes her or not, you see all of those emotions across her face, and that's true for the entire game. It is
for every character.
Yes, and these are all handmade. These weren't mocapped like you know, any game would do these days. These were all just handcrafted things. It is incredible. I don't think I've ever seen a game of that quality. And
it combines with the voice acting too. Like Joel's line where he is like, you find something to live for, and Ellie like shifts her body, goes, I know that's not what you want to hear, is what he says, and he like stutters his voice and his face reacts, and everything about it just is such a more depth of character. And there's a lot to be said about the concepts and what they did, but the thing that really makes all these concepts, I think, feel and last better and marinate better is the execution on them in the cutscenes is so flawless. It is visually pleasing to look at. It's telling the story with the visuals. It sounds good because crazy good voice actors, really good music, and it's paced well. Whenever a several heavy scenes happen and you get smash cuts. And other heavy scenes happen and they let it linger for just the right enough time. After Ellie says, okay, before the game ends, her face is on the screen for the right amount of time. It is all purely just overwhelmingly great execution, in my opinion.
I don't think I've ever seen a game of that, like, skillful execution. It blows me away every time I see it, and especially for the time. Oh my god. It makes FF7R just look like a trash fire. You know, like it is.
FF7R makes FF7R look like a trash fire.
Now, to wrap this up, I want to ask 2 questions. One, do you think Joel told Ellie after? We talked about how, like, Joel doesn't like react properly in the moment, but he comes around later, and he does this a bunch throughout the game. Do you think he told her after that he lied to her?
My personal feeling is, I get the feeling that it'd be something that Ellie figures out on her own and then confronts Joel.
Yeah, that would be narrative. Do you think that would, like, do you think that jives with the character that Joel's established?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. What you're saying is, he usually takes a while to turn around, but I think there's a level of, it's the protecting your child thing. I'm not going to let my child's soul be weighed down by the weight of all of humanity on it. That is part of protecting your child, I think. And to him, I think he would try to hide that information as best he could, because the 2 things Ellie can do is turn herself in to make this happen later on and die, which is not protecting your child, or sink into the abyss of the unimaginable weight of what is all of humanity resting on the back of your brain.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's a good way of putting it. There is a correct answer to this because Last of Us 2 exists. No, he doesn't tell her. But I thought it was interesting because I wanted to kind of think if Last of Us 2 actually characterized Joel properly. But that's a good argument for it, so I'll take that. And the second question I want to ask: why is it called The Last of Us?
I think a lot of it has to do with every group of people we meet, in a lot of senses, feel like this is going to be a weird analogy, but in Lord of the Rings, when they're at Helm's Deep and they're holding off against the Orc Horde, it feels like everyone has that mentality of this is our last stand for all of us. And The Last of Us for Joel and Ellie is like, these are, it doesn't ever feel like after this game that they're going to go to, like, live with Tommy now. No, it's just us against them, period. And it feels like that for everyone. For Henry and Sam, for Bill and Porn, for Pack of Cannibals, for Firefly. It evokes this idea of everyone is dealing with their own kind of personal, like, I Am Legend bit of we're all that matters left in the world.
Yeah, I actually fundamentally agree with that. I'm angry how quickly you came to that after blindsiding you with this question, because I've dealt with this question for years. Since I played the game, I've never known why it was called The Last of Us. But yeah, the conclusion I've come to is it refers collectively to humanity, to the people that we see, the groups and individuals that we encounter. We are the last of us. And it evokes the idea of survival, to be the last. What does it mean? Does it mean you're Bill because you hold up in your own city where nobody's allowed? Or does it mean you're Tommy, where you've created a community, maybe the last bastion of, like, goodness in the world, What does it mean to be the last of us? Or, I mean, the DLC was called Left Behind because, like, Ellie's constantly being left behind throughout it, but at the end of the day, between Ellie and Riley, Ellie is the last of them. She's always the last to live, and it's not a single person, it's just a collective feeling of representing your humanity in whatever way you think is fit.
And I think the game is just really good at using its, like, key words to be evocative. Like, Last of Us is evocative, even if you don't think about it. They don't do enough with the Fireflies, but in a lot of ways, like, the Fireflies are the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, they represent, like, the names represent things really well. I complained about graffiti earlier, but the things that you read, like, convey something in the game that, like, makes you feel like instantly feel the weight of your surroundings or the emotional plight that not just Joel and Ellie, deal with, but everyone deals with.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good opportunity to just sum up my final thoughts on this game. When I played it originally, it was one of my favorite games of all time, and having replayed it many years later with a new critical, analytical eye towards it, it's still one of my favorite games ever. I think it's one of the most masterful stories ever told in a video game. I think the characters are some of the best, maybe the best ever created. It has many of my favorite cutscenes in existence are in this one game. I can't overstate how important this game has been in my gaming career. And I'm really just happy that it holds up. There's a lot of things that I thought might have gone wrong, and I was a little worried when I suggested we play it, because I was like, maybe one of my favorite games isn't going to be as good as I thought. But no, it's just as good, maybe better than I thought. So, criticisms aside, I think this game is a must-play for anyone who actually cares about games, who cares about the medium as a storytelling device. Last of Us is a must-play.
I feel like I have less to say, but I think it is a pretty good answer to, like, what is the point of a game like this? The game is philosophically thought-provoking, interesting, emotionally gut-wrenching, all of the things you expect out of a good story, and it's fun to play. So what more would you ask out of a game? Like, what are you expecting more than something to think about, something to have fun while doing, and something that will linger in your brain as you go forward? I just can't think of any other formula for a game that would be better than that formula.
Yeah, and that's why I say, you gotta play it. You just gotta. There's a remaster on PS4. It's extremely good.
I don't think anyone listening to this who hasn't played Last of Us 1. And if you play games for stories, and you just want to have a really engaging story, and you also like to, while you're playing, to feel engaged, to feel a part of it, to be feeling like you're doing strategy, we're going to review Detroit Become Human next time.
What? Hey everyone, thanks for listening to our podcast. This one was a special one for me, and I think for Joey. So I'm happy if anyone got to the end of this. I really appreciate it. Check us out on Twitter at bossdoor4. That's bossdoor and the letter 4. And you can, send us feedback. You can email us at bossdoorpodcast@gmail.com. We release monthly. The first of the month, you'll be seeing this, and then the first of the month after that, apparently, you'll be seeing Detroit Become Human.
We have to do it now. I guarantee that we're doing it.
I'll never forgive you. Thanks for listening.